Good evening, everyone. My name is Riley Johnson. I'm a QA engineer from Portland, Oregon. And in this project, I concentrated on API testing for several post method endpoints, mobile layout testing, and exploratory UI testing of the lead management Kanban board. My scope involved identifying weaknesses in API functionality through HTTP status code validation and error handling, assessing mobile layouts for responsiveness and usability, and uncovering UI issues within the Kanban board's display and filtering of data. My objectives were to enhance user experience and software quality by detecting critical issues that could impact customers and the business. I was able to enhance many skills. I became more proficient using Postman. In Jira, I developed better organizational habits by creating folders and using consistent labels to streamline test cases and bug reporting. This made it easier to access important information. I gained more experience collaborating on a team across different time zones and working styles, and also got to practice more exploratory testing in new testing environments. In terms of newly acquired skills, I learned a lot of new functions in Postman, such as how to fork collections, create pull requests, and how to utilize pre-request and post-request test scripts. I also learned a new project management tool called DriveT, and I participated in daily stand-ups for the first time. But probably one of the most beneficial skills that I acquired was learning the style of charter testing. I found this to be a great tactic to help improve my focus and break down overwhelming testing tasks into more manageable parts. For my technical contributions, I had 33 test cases across two different API endpoints. I logged 28 bug reports in Jira and developed 5 charter test scenarios. So first I'd like to highlight a few testing scenarios I did. We'll take a look at Postman. This is Postman highlighting some of the inconsistencies with the error handling that I found. First, I'll just show you our positive test. The carrier ID has to be in all capitals, and the transaction date needs to be in this format, year, month, day. So if we run that, we get a code 200, and this is the response. And then I started running different cases with the transaction date, basically putting invalid transaction dates, whether it be format or other scenarios. And pretty much every time I got code 500, internal server error. I counted these as bugs because I was expecting code 400, bad request. But then as I ran through my test cases, I started to get that code 500 almost every time. So I wasn't sure if it was intended or not. But then if we go over here to the invalid year, put the year as 1900, I ran that test and I got the 400 bad request. So I think this highlights an inconsistency with the error handling. Also, the response that I got back, I felt wasn't very user-friendly. I made a suggestion to create something more user-friendly, something that informs the user, like what went wrong, something, that's not all code, and something they could correct on the front end. So that's just a small snippet of some of the work I did in Postman. So now I'd like to run through another area of testing that I did. This time was some exploratory UI testing on the Supernova web application, specifically on the leads management Kanban board. And I chose to focus my testing mostly on different scenarios with the filtering aspect of the Kanban board, as well as the counter values of each lead category and how they correlated to the backlog. So as you can see here, currently we have 5 proposed. We have 3 closing. Now we could move one of these over to proposed. And then now we have 6. So we can verify that in the backlog here. We can head over to the backlog and we can run a filter for all proposed leads. And now it looks like we have more than 6. Looks like we have about 8. So we can do the same thing here. On our board, it says we have 3 closing. You can head over to the backlog, run a filter. So it shows here we have 4 closing. So I found this discrepancy in many different cases and scenarios. And so I documented this bug in Jira. I think it could really impact just reliability and the overall user trust in the product. After finishing the task of manually testing my API endpoints in Postman, I had some extra time and I decided to experiment with automating the tests. I used what I learned from Sprint 7 in the Triple 10 course, along with some further documentation and research. I ended up writing the tests in JavaScript, using Axos to make the HTTP calls, and Jest as the framework to run them. Most of my tests involve using a try-catch block to handle error responses. I really learned a lot from this experience. Even though it wasn't part of the project scope, I'm glad I had the chance to practice using an API that already had manual test cases. One really important thing that I learned how to do was how to add a helper function before my test to set up the API request. This basically worked as like a before hook. It really made it easy to run multiple test cases without having to repeat or write the same code for each one. But I didn't do it alone. A teammate, Christiana, collaborated with me. She added her own test cases and test scripts. She also taught me some great organizational skills like using git ignore, git merge, git fetch. It was really fun seeing her tests and using them as a study guide. In terms of challenges, there weren't too many thanks to our great team and management. However, we had a few issues, such as our API expert Prashant being away unexpectedly. Also, understanding insurance terminology to better test the software, and managing our time, especially during mobile testing. I think we overcame these issues by supporting one another, doing outside research, and also really benefiting from the open communication and video demonstrations from Jonathan Cost and Mike Lee. For time management, we used charter testing and focused on prioritizing tasks. Some of my key takeaways, or the things that I found most rewarding about this project, was the opportunity to work with a motivated team in a professional, agile environment, meeting deadlines and exceeding expectations. And I also appreciated the hands-on use cases that allowed me to apply my theoretical knowledge and gain valuable insights from other participants. Well, I'm sad to see this contract end. I look forward to future projects like this in my QA career. Thank you very much to Triple 10 and Supernova for this amazing experience, and thank you for listening.